So the Chicago Sky are attempting to skip the rebuild. I mean, that's basically their strategy. Their GM has come out and said, as long as Skylar Diggins is on the team, we got to be winning and that sort of thing. And they've put together a team that is much more equipped to win now than the team that they had a year ago. The question is whether that's the right move for the franchise overall. You know, yesterday the news more or less was out with Haley Van Lith. And look, I don't want to overstate that. Haley Van Lith is more famous than she is productive at the WNBA level. That's not a diss. It's just, you know, she's a pretty well.
Angel Reese stood there in utter disbelief as the news broke across the facility. The Chicago Sky weren't just making a small adjustment, they were burning the traditional blueprint to the ground. In a move that has left the entire league questioning their sanity, the front office decided to skip the rebuild entirely. They aren't waiting for a savior like Caitlin Clark or a lucky lottery ball to fall their way. They are going all in right now, and the shockwaves from this decision have sent Angel Reese into a spiral of confusion about where this franchise is actually headed. This wasn't supposed to happen this way.
And look, I don't want to overstate that. Haley Van Lith is more famous than she is productive at the WNBA level. That's not a diss. It's just, you know, she's a pretty well-known player from her college days and hasn't really done anything at the WNBA level. Played 12 minutes a night for Chicago last year, 3.5 points per game. They had some nice preseason showings. Hopefully she gets another chance somewhere, but they did trade up for her in the draft. So that's a thing that's like, okay, was that bad asset management? Fair criticism. As far as like, was this a terrible mistake for the
GM made it crystal clear when she stepped to the microphone. As long as Skylar Diggins Smith is wearing a Chicago jersey, the goal is winning, not waiting for the future to arrive. It is a bold, some might even say reckless, strategy that prioritizes the present over a potentially golden future. While other teams are tanking for the next generation of superstars, the Sky are aggressively hunting for immediate glory. They believe they have the pieces to compete today, even if it means sacrificing everything they might need tomorrow. It is a high-stakes gamble that has the locker room buzzing with a mix of excitement and pure dread.
Roster, I wouldn't go that far. Now, with Haley Van Lith out, in came Natasha Cloud. Cloud was the highest profile free agent remaining. Really the only true high profile free agent remaining, with Tina Charles retired now. And she comes in, and obviously we know what Natasha Cloud brings. She got paid, looked like around the league average is where it settled in. And with a Cloud, Skylar Diggins, eventually Courtney Vandersloot backcourt, you've got a couple of different looks there. You've got obviously veteran experience. You've got, you know, winning experience and all that. So
look at the bombshell involving Haley Van Lith. This was supposed to be a cornerstone piece, a player the Sky actually traded up for in the draft. Her college fame preceded her, but the transition to the professional level has been anything but smooth. She was playing barely 12 minutes a night, averaging a meager 3 points. The decision to move on from her so quickly is a stinging admission of poor asset management. It shows just how desperate the front office is to fix their mistakes in real time, regardless of the optics or the lost draft capital it took to get her into the building in the first place.
Much improved from last season. The problem is, you know, where's their ceiling? And that's where I would be the most concerned with the way that the Sky have gone about building their roster and making these moves. I mean, you look at the roster here itself, and Camila Cardoso, I'm not a huge believer in and fan of. She hasn't really expanded her game. I would take Angel Reese over Camila Cardoso. Obviously, Reese was shipped out. She still has the size and the touch and everything, but in modern basketball, can she defend in space at all? Can she ever, you know?
With Van Lith out the door, the Sky immediately swung for the fences by signing Natasha Cloud. She was arguably the highest profile free agent left on the market, especially with legends like Tina Charles officially entering retirement. Cloud brings a championship pedigree and a veteran presence that this young core desperately needs, but her arrival signals a definitive end to any process or long-term building. By paying her the league average and slotting her into the backcourt, the Sky are sending a message to the rest of the WNBA. We are coming for the crown right now, and we aren't waiting for anyone's permission.
Hasn't really expanded her game. I would take Angel Reese over Camila Cardoso. Obviously, Reese was shipped out. She still has the size and the touch and everything, but in modern basketball, can she defend in space at all? Can she ever, move to the point where she's stretching the floor and not needing the ball in that specific situation for everybody to have to play off of that? And then they're a very old team just in general. I mean, the players that become really important now, I think, are J.C. Sheldon, who they also gave up draft capital for, and Jaquez, who they.
This backcourt is now loaded with veteran experience, featuring Cloud alongside Skylar Diggins-Smith and eventually Courtney Vandersloot. On paper, it looks like a powerhouse. You have winning experience, elite playmaking, and a level of grit that is hard to find. The Sky are certainly much more equipped to win today than they were just a year ago. However, the real question that keeps analysts up at night is the ceiling. How far can this veteran-heavy group actually go when they are facing off against the super teams that have been methodically built over the last few seasons? The pressure is on to prove they aren't just chasing ghosts.
I mean, the players that become really important now, I think, are J.C. Sheldon, who they also gave up draft capital for, and Jaquez, who they drafted higher than most people thought she would be drafted. Rickea Jackson as well, who was, a big upside play in that trade for Ariel Atkins. But, they gave up a lot of their draft capital. Basically, they gave up all of their chances for any shot at the transcendent talents who are on their way into the WNBA. They don't have their picks over the next 2 seasons, either via pick swap.
The tension reached a boiling point when the discussion turned to the front court. There is a massive divide in how people view the potential of Kamilla Cardoso. Some see her size and touch as a gift, while others are far more skeptical about her fit in the modern game. In today's basketball, can she actually defend in space? Can she ever evolve to a point where she stretches the floor? The shocking reality is that while some would take Angel Reese over her, Reese was the one shipped out of the building. It is a move that has left fans scratching their heads, and Reese herself in a state of absolute shock about the team's direction.
Into the WNBA. They don't have their picks over the next 2 seasons, either via pick swap or just traded away. So they have no chance at Juju Watkins and Sarah Strong. And those would be the 2 players you kind of identify as like, oh, they could change the entire dynamics of a franchise. As is, they've got a veteran-laden team. They've got an experienced team. They've got a tough team. Stevens brings the ability to score from the outside at the forward spot. Banham has talked about taking on a bigger role.
Losing a player like Angel Reese, who brings a specific brand of intensity and rebounding, seems like a massive risk when you are banking on Cardoso's traditional post play. The game is moving away from stationary centers who need the ball in specific spots for everyone else to function. If Cardoso cannot adapt to the speed and spacing of the modern WNBA, the Sky's win now strategy could come crashing down faster than anyone expected. The front office is betting the house on a style of play that many believe is becoming obsolete, leaving the roster in a very precarious position as they attempt to skip the natural rebuilding process.
They've got a veteran-laden team. They've got an experienced team. They've got a tough team. Stevens brings the ability to score from the outside at the forward spot. Banham has talked about taking on a bigger role as a shooter. I still don't know. I mean, this is probably going to be Sky Diggins now, who's the point of attack player who makes things happen and creates for Chicago. So they went straight from the basement to win now mode and skip the rebuild. And that would be my biggest concern for the Sky City.
The age of this roster is another massive red flag that cannot be ignored. The Sky have become one of the oldest teams in the league almost overnight. While experience is valuable in the playoffs, the grind of a full season can take a brutal toll on veteran legs. They have doubled down on players who are in the twilight of their prime rather than investing in the youth movement sweeping the rest of the league. It is a philosophy that flies in the face of everything we know about sustained success in professional sports. They are chasing a window that might already be closing, and the lack of young depth is a ticking time bomb. To make matters worse, the Sky have effectively set their future on fire. In their pursuit of these veteran pieces, they have traded away almost all of their valuable draft capital. They don't have their own picks for the next 2 seasons due to various swaps and trades. This means they have zero chance of landing the transcendent talents currently dominating the college landscape. Players like Juju Watkins and Sarah Strong are the types of athletes who can change the entire dynamic of a franchise for a decade. By skipping the rebuild, the Sky have locked themselves out of the lottery and the chance to secure a truly legendary future. Imagine being a franchise and realizing you have no path to the next superstar. Juju Watkins is widely considered a generational talent who will redefine the league, and the Sky have ensured they won't even be in the conversation to draft her. It is a staggering loss of opportunity that could haunt the organization for years to come. While other teams are positioning themselves to grab these game changers, Chicago is stuck with a roster that has a very clear and limited shelf life. The short-term gains they are hunting for could lead to a decade of absolute mediocrity if these veterans don't deliver a championship immediately. The roster does have some bright spots that the front office is clinging to. JC Sheldon was a player they gave up significant draft capital for, and the pressure on her to perform immediately is immense. They also took a gamble on Hackis, drafting her much higher than most scouts anticipated. Then there is Rickea Jackson, who came over in a high-stakes trade for Ariel Atkins. These are the players who represent the upside of the Sky's current strategy. But even with these young additions, the overall structure of the team remains heavily skewed toward the older generation, leaving very little room for these rookies to grow. There is a sense of desperation in these moves that is hard to mask. When you give up that much draft capital for players who might not even be starters, it suggests a lack of a cohesive long-term vision. The front office is operating like a team that is one piece away from a title, but the reality on the court might be much different. They are trying to shortcut a process that usually takes years of careful planning and scouting. By jumping straight from the basement to win now mode, they have skipped the most crucial stage of development for any professional sports team, and the consequences of that shortcut are looming. Stevens is another player who will be expected to carry a massive load this season. Her ability to score from the outside at the forward spot is one of the few things that gives this offense any semblance of modern spacing. If she isn't hitting her shots at a high clip, the entire offensive system could become congested and stagnant. The Sky are relying on a handful of players to perform at their absolute peak just to stay competitive. There is very little margin for error on this roster, and one injury to a key veteran could derail the entire experiment before it even truly begins, leaving them with no backup plan. Even Banham has been vocal about taking on a much larger role as a primary shooter for this squad. She knows that the Sky are desperate for floor spacers who can keep defenses honest, but can she truly provide the consistent volume scoring needed to offset the loss of younger, more athletic wings? The Sky are asking a lot of their role players, pushing them into positions that might be slightly outside their comfort zones. It is a testament to how thin this roster actually is beneath the surface-level names of the veteran stars they have managed to collect through these aggressive and controversial trades. Skylar Diggins-Smith remains the undisputed engine of this team. She is the point-of-attack player who makes everything happen and creates opportunities for everyone else on the floor. Her leadership and skill are unquestioned, but the weight of an entire franchise's skip the rebuild strategy is now resting squarely on her shoulders. If she can't perform at an MVP level, the Sky are going to find themselves in a very dark place. They have put all their eggs in the basket of her remaining an elite force in this league for the foreseeable future, ignoring the reality that everyone eventually slows down. The internal reaction to these moves has been a mix of confusion and silent protest. Many insiders believe the Sky are making a historic mistake by ignoring the draft-heavy landscape of the current WNBA. With the league's popularity exploding, the incoming talent is better than it has ever been. By opting out of the lottery, Chicago is essentially saying they don't need the next Caitlin Clark to be successful. It is a level of confidence that borders on arrogance, especially considering they were just in the basement of the standings a short time ago. They are betting against the trend of the entire sport. Angel Reese's reported shock stems from the realization that the team's identity is shifting away from the grit and grind of the youth movement she was supposed to lead. The trade that shipped her out wasn't just a personnel change, it was a total philosophical pivot. The Sky are no longer interested in building around the hungry, social media savvy stars of tomorrow. They want the established, battle-tested veterans of yesterday. This shift has created a rift in the fan base and left many wondering if the organization even knows what year it is. They are moving backward while the rest of the league moves forward. The atmosphere in Chicago is tense as the season approaches. The fans are used to winning, but they also understand the value of a proper rebuild. Seeing the team bypass that process to sign Natasha Cloud and trade away Angel Reese has left many feeling disconnected from the team's direction. There is a fear that the Sky are becoming a retirement home for stars who can no longer carry a team to a championship on their own. If the wins don't come early and often, the pressure on the GM and the coaching staff is going to become unbearable, and the impossible choice will be seen as a failure. What happens if the Sky miss the playoffs anyway? Without any draft picks to look forward to, they will be stuck in a cycle of desperation. They won't have the assets to trade for a superstar, and they won't have the picks to grow one from within. They are essentially walking a tightrope without a safety net. Every other team in the league is watching this experiment with a mix of curiosity and pity. If Chicago pulls this off, they will be geniuses who defied the odds. If they fail, they will be a cautionary tale for the next 20 years about the dangers of trying to shortcut the natural cycle of the league. The modern WNBA demands versatility and speed, two things that this veteran-heavy Sky roster might struggle to provide. While players like Natasha Cloud and Skylar Diggins-Smith have the IQ to compensate for some physical decline, the young stars entering the league are faster and more athletic than anything we've seen before. The Sky are betting that veteran savvy can overcome raw, explosive talent. It is a bet that has failed more often than it has succeeded in the history of professional sports, yet the Sky are doubling down with everything they have left. They are standing alone on this hill. As the news continues to settle, the true cost of skipping the rebuild is becoming clear. It isn't just about the wins and losses on the court, it's about the lost identity of a franchise that once knew how to build from the ground up. Angel Reese's exit and the arrival of Natasha Cloud represent the end of one era and the beginning of a very uncertain one. The Sky have chosen the hard path, the impossible path, and the entire basketball world is waiting to see if they can survive the journey they have so recklessly chosen for themselves. The stakes have never been higher for the city of Chicago. Ultimately, the Chicago Sky are playing a game of chicken with the future of their franchise. By turning their backs on the draft and the youth movement, they have placed a massive bet on the immediate present. If they don't deliver a championship or at least a deep playoff run, the silence from the front office will be deafening. They chose to ignore the chance at the next generational talent in exchange for a veteran core that is already fighting against time. Only one thing is certain, the choice they made will define this organization for a generation, and the world is watching to see it unfold.